What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Just want to make a video talking about the press conference today, which I was surprised to see. I turned on YouTube this morning. I saw the notification that it was coming up, and I was like, wow, like, I didn't expect this to happen. I heard the rumors and everything, and I just kind of ignored it, because you're getting tired of the heavyweight division. You hear a lot of rumors. I mean, just a couple months ago, they were talking about Fury and Usyk having their fight in December, and then Wilder and Joshua fighting each other on the undercard and all of this stuff in Saudi Arabia. And I was like, man, the Saudi Arabians, I know they got money, but I just was like, nah, there's no way all these guys would be together on the same card when these rumors started. So I ignored it, but when I saw it today, I was like, wow, and I waited, and I was like, damn, this is really happening. You got Queensberry, you got Matchroom, Top Rank, and, well, I mean, Top Rank is involved, but I don't know exactly how they're involved, but they're involved some way too. And, you got Shelly Finkel up there representing Deontay Wilder. So it's like all of these guys have made countless videos and did interviews talking about the problems they had with making fights. And they're all together. I don't care about the fighters having beef. I don't care about that because the fighters don't have to get along because they're supposed to fight each other at the end of the day. But as far as the promoters sitting up there on that stage was shocking to me, to see them all there is shocking. And before I get started and giving you my thoughts on this whole presser, I just want to start off by saying that I'm not sure yet if this Saudi Arabian thing is a good thing or not. I think it's a good thing in the sense that whatever they did to make this work out between all these promoters and the way and how quickly they were able to make it work, whatever they did, I'm sure it involves money because it always involves money. I'm sure it can work out again in the future without too much of an issue, right? But that is when it comes to fights happening over there. I don't know how that works when it comes to the rest of the world, though. You know what I mean? I'm literally watching a presser and I'm thinking about it as I'm sitting here watching them. And I'm like, okay, you guys have the money to just throw at. You can make the call, like, how much do you want? They can literally make the call, like, how much do you want to make the fight? But everywhere else does it. They can't do that in Vegas. It doesn't work in New York. I don't even think it works in the UK like that. So if it's good that we're getting these super cards in Saudi, and it's going to lead, this is the first of a few more, because if Wilder and Joshua is to win their fights this December, that means they fight each other on the next card. And I'm sure that card is going to have a super monster undercard as well, right? But here you took a bunch of names, a bunch of champions or former champions, you put them all on the same card at one time. And it's a start. Like, not all of the fights are great, but it's the fact that you were able to put them all there. All the different promoters came together. Specifically Frank and Eddie, right? They're all there. But how does that work for the rest of the world? And one thing is, if they are paying these fighters a certain amount of money to get them all there, are fighters going to want to take big fights if it's not in Saudi Arabia? Because I always hear that now from guys like Eddie Hearn when he's doing like certain interviews. He's like, the money, it seems like the fights that we want, the fights that it's hard to get the fighters to do because they're never satisfied with the purses or the offers. It seems like the money has to come from the Saudis in order to make these fights happen, when we should be getting these fights, whether in New York, Vegas, Texas, or out in the UK or whatever. We should be getting these fights. And it's come to a point now, and it seems like the fighters are overpricing themselves because they've been paid too much and they haven't been performing that well or fighting that active. But a lot of these fighters on this card, a lot of them, not all of them, have been active. Some of them recently just fought. Arslan Beck and Joseph Parker just fought. You know what I mean? Dubois didn't fight too long ago. I think Joshua fought twice this year. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm wondering if this is good outside of Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? Because let's just say that is going to be the new mecca of boxing. Like going into the next year, they're going to hold the biggest fights because they're able to pay the most amount of money. Are they making a profit? Even if they have it, are they making a profit out there to entertain us? I'm grateful for what they're doing, but can it be done anywhere else? And if it can't be done, are these promoters willing to work with each other now moving forward outside of Saudi Arabia? You know what I mean? Like, that's my next question. Because of this, are the other promoters going to be able to move forward together? That could be a good thing because they're working together now. And even though they look extremely uncomfortable on that stage today, they were still able to come together. And I think that involves money. There's always a price. There's always a price. No matter how these guys make it seem like this fighter's on this network with this promoter and they can't go over there and fight this guy wrong side of the street, all that bullshit. There's been certain occasions on the very highest level, Fury Wilder, Floyd Pacquiao, where fighters were able to cross promote and make a good fight. And we know on the lowest level, when their fighters are not top tier names, it's easy to make fights work with fighters that fight on a different platform or with a different promoter, you know, because they're not famous enough. You know, it's not a big risk to some of the promoters to make fights with certain fighters that are not that big of a name. You know, Stephen Fulton was able to just go out to Japan and fight Inoue. You know, and there's a lot of other fighters as well. You know, Top Rank and Matthew, obviously they work together plenty of times, but I'm talking about Boxer. I'm talking about Queensberry and Matchroom. Can they get together and say, you know what? Let's put our beef to the side. Let's make this fight happen for the fans. And can it happen outside of Saudi Arabia? Because we shouldn't have to wait until Saudi puts up the money in order to make the fights happen. And then the fighters, are they getting paid too much by the Saudis now to accept money elsewhere? So that's my one question out of all of this. As far as this card, as excited as I was to see them all come out together, it kind of reminded me of the PBC rollout they did years ago, when they started with Fox and all of these other networks, when they all rolled out in their suits. Sean Porter, you know, Spence, Thurman, and Guerrero, and Adrian Broner, and all these guys, they all came out and they were part of the PBC. It kind of reminded me of that, but this was different. The difference is this is one card. So you got all these fighters, Opataya, Daniel Dubois, Bivol, Wilder, Joshua. You got all these guys, Parker, all these guys coming out at the same time. Hergovich, you got all these guys coming out at the same time. And then you got Eddie, you got Frank, you got Shelly Finkel. You know what I mean? You got all these guys coming out at the same time. And I was like, wow, man, this is crazy. You know, this looks more like an event. This is like a real, this is like a Hall of Fame thing instead of it being a card. So I like to see that, and I like to see the promoters work together, because they should be working together, because they should be giving us the best fights, and they also should be working together for the legacy of the fighters. Because when you guys don't get along, that means that this fighter that has this belt can't unify with this fighter over here because you guys can't work something out. You know what I mean? So we need to see more of this. But the event was a little disappointing. It was actually very disappointing. You know what I mean? Because Gerald Miller showed up. Everybody went up there. It felt awkward. We were surprised by it, but they also made it awkward because everyone just felt uncomfortable being there, including the fighters. And it kind of made things weird. Okay, so when everybody got their turn to speak on the mic, everyone just kept saying, "Well, I'm just glad to be here. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you, Your Excellency, for giving us the opportunity." Everybody said the same thing up until Gerald Miller. And Gerald Miller was like, "Yo, we're here for a fight. F Anthony Joshua, F Deontay Wilder, F Danny Dubois. He's trash." I like that. Not saying that you guys got to be disrespectful like him because he's on the extreme, but it was boring watching it. And I was waiting for somebody to say something because there's a lot of tension in that room. Shit, I even wanted the promoters to talk shit to each other. You, Shelly, Frank, and Eddie should be talking about each other too. You know, as far as defending your fighter and why it took so long for us to get these kind of guys on the same card. But the fighters should have been saying something outside of Gerald Miller. I think Anthony Joshua came in with that energy. I don't know. Did anyone check to see if he was wearing black Air Force Ones? Because the tension was on Joshua's face the whole time he was there. So, I mean, he knew he was in a room with Wilder, who's recently been putting out content talking about him. Gerald Miller has always been talking about him. You know, Gerald Miller has always been running his mouth. You know what I mean? I like the fact that Otto Wallin said what he said about Joshua slipping and falling off, you know, and catching him at a time where he's slipping a little bit. I like that because that kind of woke Joshua up a little bit outside of the Gerald Miller comments. But outside of that, I was a little disappointed because we already know the exchange that we really wanted to see was between Wilder and Anthony Joshua. And being that Wilder just made a video days ago on his social media talking about, do I have to fly out there and have a one-on-one conversation with you? Because I feel like you are afraid of me. Or, you know, he made a video the other day just to go up there today and say blessings and, you know, I wish you the best even if we don't fight. Yeah, but I'm thinking that this is a build up to you guys fighting each other next, right? So why would you make that comment? Because what I wanted to hear is, even though we all know you're focused on your opponent, you're focused on Joseph Parker, cool, but you just made a video about Anthony Joshua a few days ago as if you didn't know you was flying to Saudi Arabia to see him. And maybe at that time you didn't know. I don't know how quickly they made this deal, but let me just say that I expected more from Wilder and Joshua. You know, I mean, I'm going to tell you why I expected more from Joshua. Because, excuse me, even though he was talking about Otto Wallin, I expected his promoter or someone up there to ask Joshua as well, how does he feel about Wilder finally being there? And then when they asked Wilder about, do you have anything to say about Anthony Joshua in that fight? He was like, you know, I'm focused on, everybody knows. Like, he made a comment about people not wanting to fight him, but he wasn't direct. And not only was he not direct, but he wasn't direct. And then when the interviewer was up there asking, like, well, what do you feel about Anthony Joshua? And he was like, listen, I wish you the best of luck. He looked them into his eyes while Joshua was looking and staring at him over there the whole time. And Wilder said, I wish you the best even if we don't fight. It's kind of disappointing being that we just saw you online talking as if you needed to fly out there to talk to him directly. Well, that was your opportunity and we didn't get it. And I was disappointed in that because after years and years, how many years of this back and forth has been going on as far as who's going to fight who? It's been about 6 years at least, 7 years maybe. I don't know. But all I know is that I expected more. I expected what I got from Gerald Miller, but that's all I got. Everybody else was very quiet. Obviously, Joshua was very aggressive towards Miller. But that's because Miller came at him. You know what I mean? So I was kind of disappointed in that. And it's like similar to like Regis Prograis recently. Like Regis Prograis has been doing so much talking online, man, before and after the press conference. And then when he saw Devin Haney It was like his conditioning coach was talking the whole way, the whole time, and Regis Prograis didn't say anything. He said he was going to expose him, how he lost his fight in Texas, and he didn't say anything in person. You know, and it was like, all right, well, you know, it's like, why are you doing all that talk? At least Shakur Stevenson and his pressers and his face off, he talks a whole lot in person. I like that. You know, so I was kind of disappointed, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention about the actual press conference. I just want to say this about AJ. You know, I was listening to the announcers, and they were talking like Ade and Bellew and them, and they were talking about AJ's behavior and stuff. AJ's been like this for a few fights now. You know, I don't think that the old politically correct AJ, the really super nice professional fighter, is gone. He's been gone. You know, those losses he's taken and the criticism he's received over the years has changed him, and he's gone. He's been gone. So I wasn't surprised, you know, what he said to Eddie today. I wasn't surprised at what he said back to Miller and what he said about Otto Wallin. I don't think AJ is that nice, friendly, smiling guy. I don't think he cracked a smile all day. Okay, he knew what the assignment was today. He knew who was going to be there. And he didn't come there to be friends and be friendly with no one and shake hands and smile. I don't think he was there for that. And he showed it. As much as Wilder was all about the blessings, like he was against Tyson Fury, when he saw Fury in out in Saudi, the last one of those last fights that was out there. I'm not sure which fight it was now. I can't remember, but I know Wilder was out there and he ran into Fury, and he was again like blessings, and you know, all that stuff you say online just to be blessings, and all right, whatever. But Joshua is gone from that. You know, I think people, it still shocks people because we went years with seeing him being so professional, but now he's back to just, you know, talking his talk, you know, and not being friendly. And we only seen that in certain moments. Even when Dillian White, when he went to fight White, even as though White was being like really aggressive with him and talking a lot of trash and stuff, notice how Joshua was always still smiling and laughing and keeping his cool. But in the ring, he was a bully in the ring that night. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are still waiting for that version of him to come back, including myself. But anyway, let's talk about the fights real quick. I'm going to go through them. Obviously, I'll do videos about them fights separately at some point, but it's a lot of fights. Philip Hrgovic is fighting Mark Demori, all right? He's going to be fighting a guy. This guy got a really, really high KO ratio. I'm not sure if I've seen him before, but I just know he's a knockout artist. But I know in the 2 losses he got knocked out. He's fighting some really low-level fighters, a lot of losing record fighters. You know, he's not fighting top-tier guys. So we know Philip Hrgovic is already the IBF mandatory. He's just looking for a shot. He's not looking to get into a tough fight because he's looking to fight the winner of Usyk and Fury. All right, he's next up. So he's in there with a KO artist. Of course, the other guy got a punch his chance, but I'm not expecting this to be a tough fight for him. But I do have to check this guy out to see what's going on with that. The 2 other heavyweight fights here on this level, on a lower level, I guess Frank Sanchez against Junior Fa, and you got Arslan Beck against Agi Kabayel. Frank Sanchez against Junior Fa is another fight where it's like, you know what, not for nothing, but Frank Sanchez should be fighting Philip Hrgovic, and you know, Junior Fa should be fighting Mark Demori or something like that. You know what I mean? Junior Fa, his name was buzzing because of the rivalry he had as an amateur with Joseph Parker. Him being from New Zealand as well, him being Samoan, that was a big thing. But once they fight and the performance we got from that fight from him, he lost his buzz. And then when he got knocked out by Lucas Brown in that devastating knockout, he kind of lost all his buzz. And just fighting guys on this level is pointless. Not really a good matchup to me. Probably the worst matchup of this card because Frank Sanchez is not good coming forward. He's got a guy that he's more tricky. He's better at working, fighting behind the counter and using a ring and fight on his back foot, setting traps. Whenever he's forced to fight a fighter that he has to be coming forward for, he looks sloppy. You know what I mean? And Junior Fa is a guy that will play the waiting game. Yes, he's big, but he's not really that aggressive. And I feel like Frank Sanchez and him fighting each other is a terrible matchup. All right. I think this is probably the worst fight on the card, in my opinion. At least with Hrgovic, he's going to be fighting an aggressive puncher. So even though the guy's not on his level, it would probably be a better matchup simply because he will walk into a knockout. You know what I mean? But this fight here between Sanchez and Fa is probably the worst one on the card, or one of the worst ones on the card. All right. You got Arsenbek Makhmudov against Agi Kabayel, which is actually a pretty good fight. Kabayel will probably be his best or maybe second best opponent, depending on where you place him, between him and Carlos Takam. Not a bad fight. But again, when it comes to these 4 heavyweight fights underneath the main events, and I'm talking about Daniel Dubois, Arslanbek, Frank Sanchez, and Filip Hrgovic, I think they could have matched those fights up better instead of just putting them with randoms. And Kabayel is not a random. I apologize. I don't mean that. I do think that is a legit fight, especially for a step-up fight. But nobody knows who Kabayel is. He's good. But that's not a bad fight. And I think that is a fight that will, even if Makhmudov wins the fight, it probably will go the distance. All right. Kabayel is a pretty good boxer. So he can definitely expose some of the flaws that Arsenbek has, especially the fact that he's like one of the least technical heavyweights out there right now. All size and power, in my opinion. Now let's talk about Daniel Dubois and Gerald Miller. And I have a lot to say about this. I have a lot. All right. And if you don't know, my stance on people that get popped and lose a failed drug test is that it should be an immediate 2-year ban. This has been my stance since I've had the channel. And I haven't changed it. 2-year ban, and each additional drug should be an additional year. You got to have, if you want to really clean up boxing, you can't be inconsistent with the suspensions. So I think that Gerald Miller, failing, he's failed in the past. I believe when he was an MMA or kickboxer or something, he failed in the past. He failed leading up to Joshua with 3 different banned substances, right? And then he failed again later that year when Top Rank and Bob tried to give him a fight. He had only a 6-month suspension. Him getting an opportunity says a lot about the sport and how corrupt it is. Because Frank is willing to put his fighter, one of the faces of Queensberry, at heavyweight, Daniel Dubois. He's willing to, coming off of a loss, he's willing to put him in there with a known drug cheat. And that just goes to show you how dirty and corrupt this sport is. If you watch my very last video, I talk about corruption a lot. And this is how corrupt the sport really is. These guys really don't love you. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? Daniel Dubois and Gerald Miller, as far as the matchup itself, it's a tough fight to call. Because I really don't know how good Gerald Miller is. I don't know how good he really is because I don't know how long he's been actually juicing. He could have been juicing his way up to the Joshua fight. I don't know how good he is. And Daniel Dubois, a lot of people say that he cheats. I mean, not he cheats. He quits on his losses. A lot of people say he quit against Joe Joyce and he quit against Alexander Usyk. All right, took the knee, never got back up. So with that being said, I heard Derek Chisora say something today at the press conference. He said, listen, as far as this fight is concerned, Daniel Dubois should win if he doesn't quit. And I agree with him. Now, I'm not calling Daniel Dubois a quitter because I definitely don't think he quit against Joe Joyce. I think if you can't take any more punishment from a broken orbital bone, I'm not going to sit here and call him a quitter. You know what I mean? Because you got some sort of a fracture, one in your head. I don't know what kind of pain that feels like, but I don't want to know. I'm not gonna say and call the man a quitter. All right, just because he didn't get back up. All right, but what I will say is that Gerald Miller, I don't know how he is clean, and can he still apply that kind of pressure at a higher level? Can you still have that kind of volume at that level? Can you do that? I don't know. So it's hard to call. I think this is probably the hardest fight to call on this entire card because I know that Daniel Dubois has power, and I know that he has the power to knock Gerald Miller out. But if the fight goes long and continues to go long and Gerald Miller starts to pick him apart and outwork him and he's much bigger, how long can Daniel Dubois take the punishment from him? That is hard to call. Gerald Miller, the thing about Gerald Miller, yo, I like him. I actually like him. I really do like him. He's from Brooklyn. He acts like he's from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? I met him before. He's very cool. We have mutual friends. But I tell it as it is. He is a drug cheat. It is what it is. But I think this is what I feel. I feel that he's a drug cheat at the end of the day. And I look at it like this, man. If you're going to put this guy on the card, and I don't know who made the call for this. Maybe the Saudis did. I don't know. But if you're going to give him another opportunity at this level to fight on this stage, put him in there with someone that cheated too. You know, if you're going to put him there and put him in there with a real ranked fighter, right, that's been clean his whole career, at least as far as what we know, he's been clean. Put him in there with Dillian White. You know, if you want to spice up this card, which is clearly what they wanted to do here, Dillian White got banned. He got caught cheating early in his boxing career. He was suspended for a couple of years. It was a controversy with after the Oscar Rivas fight, which he was cleared for. And then it was the controversy recently when he's supposed to fight AJ in a rematch. So, look, man, if you're going to put him in there with someone, put him in there with someone that cheated too. Or, you know, at this point, I like Dillian White too. But, yo, at this point, you guys keep getting caught up with drugs. It's no coincidence at this point. You know what I mean? Like, put him in there with Dillian White. They've had words exchanged before. Put them in there where they're not risking the health of two ranked fighters that's been clean their whole career. You know what I mean? Like, don't put them in there with someone that is just coming off of a stoppage loss by the champion. You don't need to put them in there with Gerald Miller. Gerald Miller has not done anything. I know he's been active, but he's not fighting no top-tier fighters. That happened right before he fought AJ. It stopped. His buzz was gone. So you guys recreated it. And again, I know he does the talking. Put him in there with another guy that's recently juicing if you want to. You know, I know Dillian White is suspended, but if you want to put a juice guy in there, put him in there with another juice guy and they could just juice it out. You know what I mean? Like, it won't risk the help of any clean boxer. It won't risk the help of anyone, but theirs. And then don't even test them. Let them agree to fight. You want to be tested? No. I mean, you guys are both. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird to me. This whole thing is weird. All right, but money talks again. Money talks, and if Daniel Dubois had it, he agreed to take it. So I can't take no. I don't want to sit here and say all of that. And Daniel Dubois is also responsible because he's the one that's going in the ring. So I can't just blame Frank. You know. But I know guys like Eddie and, you know, maybe Bob said they'd never work with him again. Well, he's back. And he's on the same card as you. All right? But as far as the matchup itself, it is a 50-50 to me. Because I don't know what Gerald Miller could bring if he is clean and if he's in shape. I don't know what he can bring. But they only have 6 weeks. Jai Opetaia is going to be fighting Ellis Zorro. I've seen Zorro fight before. I didn't think he was anything special. I think Jai Opetaia is clearly the best at the division. I expect Jai to stop him. Okay? I think Jai right now is clearly the best at cruiserweight. And It's not a bad opponent. It's just that I just think he's really better than everybody else there. You know what I mean? So I have Jai winning and stopping him. You know, I will try to do a breakdown of all of these fights at some point, but you know, I have Jai beating him. I've seen him before. Same thing with Dimitri Bivol and Lyndon Arthur. I don't know what's going on with Lyndon Arthur. It's not a bad fight, but it's like Arthur was limping at the press conference today. And I know he was saying he got a call like 3 days before the presser. It's not that he shouldn't get the opportunity, especially because he is like a top maybe 10-ish lightweight, light heavyweight. Top 10, top 15. So it's not a bad fight to get Bivol back in the ring. But at the same time, it's like, if you're injured, bro, you shouldn't be fighting, you know? And I know he got the call, but even if he's better by the time the night of the fight, he looks like he won't be training at his best leading up to the fight. You know what I mean? And even if he was 100%, Bivol will beat him. But if he's not 100%, Bivol will definitely beat him. You know what I mean? So, not the worst fight, but it's not the best neither. It's like, all right, whatever. You know, it's just another good fighter that's on the card fighting another solid fighter. Bivol, great fighter, solid opponent. Jai, same thing with him. You know, same thing with Frank and Philip. You know, these guys are on a different level, and they're fighting guys that are not so good. So let's talk about the last two. I'm going to start with Anthony Joshua against Otto Wallin first. I think Deontay Wilder and Joseph Parker is probably the best fight on this card. So I'm going to start with Anthony Joshua and Otto Wallin first, and I'll go into Wilder last. I've been listening to what people have said about Otto Wallin, and it's not like I don't like him, and I don't think he's good, because I do think he's very good. I just think people are overrating him a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I know he cut Fury, and I know the cut was stoppable. I remember watching it live. I was here. But he didn't almost win the fight. They could have stopped it because of the cut, but they didn't. But as far as the fight itself was competitive, but it was a clear Fury win to me. And I think people are overrating that win. Brazil was a good win, but we know that Brazil can easily be outboxed. But I still didn't like the fact that Wallin lost like the last 3 or 4 rounds pretty clear. You know, he got tired, and he lost pretty clear in the last round. Same thing with Fury. And I'm not going to overrate his win against Gassiev, you know. Gassiev is very limited, you know, and even though, you know, the prediction was based on me picking the guy that should win was Gassiev, I put my money on Wallin because it was a live dog, and he did exactly what. It's just that with Gassiev it's tricky because I don't even know what he can do as a heavyweight. The guys he fought were too easy. So Wallin wins that fight. And I still look at this like, I think he's a tricky fighter. Yes, he's tricky. He is a southpaw. But when I look at AJ and you guys are comparing Wallin with Usyk, and that's the issue that I'm having. Because Wallin is not on Usyk's level in no sense. All right? He's not as durable as Usyk. He's not as powerful as Usyk either. All right? He doesn't have the cardio that Usyk has. And he's overall not as good as a boxer as Usyk. Usyk is way more athletic than Oscar Wallin. And when you guys say things like, when I hear things like, well, Wallin might give AJ trouble because look what Usyk did to him. Yeah, but Usyk is great preparation to have leading up to a Otto Wallin fight. What it should be is the other way around. AJ should fight a guy like Otto Wallin before going into a Usyk fight. You know what I mean? Because Usyk is far superior. So when you fight a guy like Usyk 2 fights back to back and then stop guys like what's his name, Charles Martin, like right away. Didn't even make it competitive. You just get him out of here. Can't remember how many Joshua fights with southpaws, but I think Joshua should manage, and I know Otto Wallin brought up the fact that of timing and how he's fighting Joshua at the right time, and he believes that Joshua seems to be slipping, even if he's slipping a tad bit. Even if that's true, I think Joshua has what it takes to win this fight. I mean, I would be very, very surprised if Wallin win the fight. You know what I mean? I know what he did with Fury. I know he had a tough fight for Fury, but I think Fury's style of fighting certain fighters is sometimes is a little off. You know what I mean? Like weight and agility and stuff with Fury, and it's different for each fight in different periods of his more recent career, like in his comeback career, when he's come back to fight Wilder the first time, and from there, I think different versions of Fury fit better for certain matches. Like I think with Wilder, the heavier version of him obviously fit better because it made him more durable and it made him more of a bully to a smaller guy. He was able to eat a lot of the right hands in the fight, which wasn't the case in the first fight. So I think certain versions of Fury need to be necessary going into certain fights. And if Fury was more in attack mode against Wallin, it would have been less competitive. But I also think that the heavier version of Fury wasn't the great style, the best style for fighting Francis Ngannou. I think in that fight, he needed to be lighter and more agile. You being bigger and having, heavier, it didn't mean you were stronger. You were stronger than Wilder, but you wasn't stronger against Francis Ngannou, because if you look at Francis Ngannou as a MMA fighter, he has no problem with picking up big guys, heavy guys, and slamming them on their head. He can easily do that. And we saw that in the Fury fight. And I've said this about Usyk as well. I don't think the heavier version of Fury is the best version of going into the Usyk fight. I actually think he needs to be in better shape, and he needs to be quicker and more agile than he has been in previous fight. I think the best version of Fury is when he fought Vladimir Klitschko. And even though he didn't stop Wilder in that first fight and it was close and he got dropped twice, the fact that he was able to make Wilder miss for so long in that fight just goes to show how good he can be when he's agile, and he was just getting back in the game. Just my point, just my stance. So I think sometimes people take the Wallin thing a little too far, and he does have some good wins, but I think AJ's different, and I think AJ's style matches up in AJ's favor very well against Otto Wallin. Otto is not a big puncher. He tends to gas out later in fights, and yes, he's tricky, but he's not nearly as athletic as Usyk. Usyk is doing a lot of things with his lead hand. He's bouncing around. He's changing directions. He's changing levels. It's more harder to hit a moving target, where Wallin don't move like that. He moves well, but not like that. You know what I mean? So I think AJ should be able to handle him. And I think AJ has been in the ring with about 6 or 7 guys that I think are at least as good, if not better, than Otto Wallin. He's been there. So that's just my stance on that. And I think AJ will win the fight. I don't think this is a 50-50 fight. I've even seen people say that. It's not a 50-50 fight to me. I'm just not feeling all that. I think that's a little bit over-exaggerating. And last but not least, Deontay Wilder against Joseph Parker, which I do think is closer to being a 50-50 fight. I am still leaning towards Wilder to win. But you got to understand that Joseph Parker, unlike Otto Wallin, Joseph Parker is actually the second or third best person on Wilder's resume, period. And you cannot argue that. Joseph Parker has a better resume, and he's a former champion than Luis Ortiz. Now, matchup style-wise, I personally think Luis Ortiz was more difficult for Wilder. in that first fight than Joseph Parker will be. Just my opinion. Obviously, the fight didn't happen yet. Joseph Parker could prove me wrong. But I'm talking about the matchup itself going into the fight. I just think Luis Ortiz, being that Cuban southpaw fighter with real big power and is more aggressive than Joseph Parker. I think he's even a better counterpuncher. I just think that he was a more dangerous fight than Joseph Parker. But on paper, Joseph Parker is a better fighter. He has the win over Andy Ruiz. He's been in there with better fighters than Luis Ortiz. And if you're not including Tyson Fury, I think Joseph Parker on paper is Wilder's second best opponent. Parker is quick, not as quick as he used to be. He can punch, and he's very durable, and he's very experienced now. And if Wilder is not at his best, because he may not be, because he has only fought one round in the last 2 years. And coming off of that beatdown from Fury, we don't know how durable he is. You know what I mean? We don't know. There's a lot of questions about Deontay Wilder. He's 38 years old. He's only fought one round in 2 years. And before those 2 years, he was coming off 2 stoppage losses where he took a beating in both of those stoppage losses. He took a beating. So the chances of Parker winning today is a lot greater than him winning if they had fought when they both were champions. You know what I mean? Wilder still very quick, still have the big right hand. But he's fighting someone, again, that it's not going to just take one punch to get him out of there. I think it's going to take more than that. And, you got to watch out what Parker brings too. And you got to also remember, you got to add into the equation that Parker is fighting, Wilder is fighting a man that is directly close friends and in camp with the one guy that beat him. You know what I mean? With all that resume and experience stuff that I said about Parker, you have to include the fact that he's probably gone many, many rounds with Tyson Fury. They probably prep for their future fights all of the time. So you got to throw that in the equation too. So very, very quick fight. If not 50-50, is very close to being 50-50. Maybe 55-45 for Wilder, in my opinion. I still lead towards Wilder. I still think Joseph Parker sometimes is just not aggressive enough. But I still got Wilder winning. All right. Can't wait to do the breakdowns for this card. Just kind of disappointed in the presser. All right. Anyway, I'm going to get on out of here, man. I already spoke a lot on this card. I will be here tomorrow to cover the entire Shakur Stevenson card. And make sure, again, please hit the like button if you like the content. Subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. Everything's in the description. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.